Now I hope you guys are really ready for some tough stuff, because I have prepared some really challenging stuff for today. We are going to do a bunch of middle game positions, and we're going to do some what I hope to be fun stuff as well. And of course we'll always finish with something kind of as a dessert, something very aesthetic that is kind of the amazing side of chess. But again, let me just move this, and we're going to start with a missed opportunity. All right. This is actually the position we're going to start with. And this is a position from a real game. And in the game, White played a certain move. And the game ended in a certain result. But after the game, when the players analyzed, they realized that White missed a superb opportunity here, a real golden opportunity. And let's see if you guys can figure it out. Right now we can see, if we look at the materials, we see that the black king is not super safe, right? The white king definitely looks like he's total picture of safety. And black is behind in development. He has a rook on a8, a bishop on c8 that are very clumsy. And black also has a rook on the 7th on a2. It looks like a very dangerous rook, attacking the bishop on a3. All looking very, very cool. Of course, white paid a dear price for it. He is down an exchange in a pawn. That's almost the equivalency of a whole piece to get to this position. And he became really worried about his position. So he decided that maybe this is a good time to bail. And that's what he did. We'll talk about what I mean by that, if it's a bit puzzling to you right now. So what to even do? I mean, if you just move your bishop away somewhere, then at the least I can just complete my development, and the material advantage is going to tell. You need to be a little creative here. Take a look at all the pieces and try to think to yourself, what do you think we should do here? Okay?
What about queen e5?
Very interesting. Queen to e5. Okay, but we'll see what the point is. Queen to e5 in this position. That's what he played in the game. And now, of course, he has a million threats. In this position, we can see that he's threatening, for example, rook g6, maybe winning the queen. And black really was afraid of what's going on, because white is also threatening to play stuff like bishop c5, bishop d4, right? Black is so cramped here. If I get to play bishop here and bishop here, end of the game. You're going to get mated. And also as a bonus, I'm threatening sometimes rook g6. So he decided to take this bishop, and he played queen e8 check. Notice that this is not such a good idea, because if we take here and takes back, and queen takes here, black has two rooks for a queen, and let's say I take here, and now my pass pawn looks very, very annoying. So this is not a good solution. White is probably still losing here. The pawn is too strong, and two rooks, and in this kind of a position, they're a good match for the queen. So, but white said, okay, I'm pretty modest. He played check, and they agreed to a draw. Simply because after here, he plays check, and the king, if the king goes here, then check. If queen f6, queen takes, the king cannot escape a perpetual check. So the players agreed to a draw, and everybody was, well, temporarily happy. So after this, the question is, what would have been a better move? And I will reveal the move to you, and let's see if you guys can follow it up with why that little difference would have made all the difference in the game. Queen f6. Looks like a really crazy move in this position. Well, we understand that if the black bishop moves, then white is just going to play bishop to here, and then bishop to d4, and there's going to be just mates all over the dark squares. This is just an easy win. So like bishop e6, bishop c5, and bishop d4, this is winning for white easily. But what would have happened the same like before? What would have happened if you just take the bishop? I mean, we already said that if you win the queen for the rook, then it's not enough. You have two rooks for the queen. But there is a follow-up. Again, what I'm hoping that you will pick up from this kind of a position is that don't stop calculating too soon. Like in this position, you can just say, oh, if I take the bishop, then rook d8 check, queen takes, I move my king to g7, and life is just grand for me. I have no problems. I have two rooks for a queen, and I'm attacking this pawn. Maybe this time I don't have the passer, but at least I'm not losing. Black, all I have to do is complete my development, and my life is going to be wonderful. But what did white miss? White missed some something. I'm sure if he saw queen e5, he must have seen queen f6. And he probably thought that he doesn't want to play the ending. He missed something very, very nice. What did he miss? Let me show you. This is really very nice. So if takes the bishop, then rook d8 check, winning the queen. Okay, that's normal. Takes, king g7. So we all saw until here. And we know that the two rooks are okay as a match for the queen. Except that white had a beautiful little trick here. Queen to d4 check. Doesn't matter if the king goes to g8 or f6 or h6, do whatever you want. Let's say king g8, the most unweakening move. And now white plays queen b2. And the rook is trapped. The rook is a gunner. So again, both sides missed that. One side allowed it, the other side didn't see it. So, but after the game when they analyzed, I don't know if somebody showed it to them or they just figured it out by themselves, but that would have been a real pretty finish. The whole rook is trapped in the corner. There's just no moves, 1, 2, 3, 4. You lose them after all of them, game over. Are we clear on this one? Okay, cool. Now I'm going to show you what I think is a very unusual situation. I'm going to show you an opening that goes all the way to the ending, and amazingly it's going to go all the way to a winning ending. Let me show you how that's done. Sometimes we play logical moves, developing moves. We think that we play a perfect game, and we make a little concession. We don't appreciate how bad it is, but this is just the beauty of chess. Look, so it's a normal opening, an Italian game. We must have seen this a million times, maybe even, I'm sure some of you even played it, right? White, black, or even for both colors. Knight c3, one of many variations. Knight f6, d3, d6, bishop to g5, knight a5. Okay, one of the moves that is possible. Another common possibility is to play h6, kind of hoping that the bishop will go to h4 and then you'll hit him with g5, and the bishop will end up in oblivion on g3, since black hasn't committed his king. He's not going to castle this way. So usually after h6, the bishop takes, the queen takes, the knight hops to d5, forking the queen and the pawn. The queen will retreat to d8, and then white will cover the d4 square by pushing the pawn to c3. That's another variation. Here black played knight a5. That almost always used to be a safe line for equality, because the knight gets rid of the good bishop. If the bishop goes check, then bishop d7, nothing really super alarming. So white plays bishop to b3. Okay, no problem. Knight took it, and the a pawn took, of course, towards the center, opening the a file. Right now, when we look at the position, we are not super excited. We think, hey, black has two bishops and an easy game, and he completed his development. Everything is just cool. White plays knight a4. We understand this idea. Just like your opponent wanted to trade the knight for the bishop, we want to do the same. That bishop is a strong piece. Let's trade it. Now, watch what happened. Black played h6, bishop h4. Okay? Notice that now things are a bit different. After g5, I'm less worried about putting my bishop to g3. But still, I think that he should have done it right here. Instead, watch what happened. Bishop to g4. Pinning the knight, trying to take advantage, improving the position of the bishop. But this move is a bad mistake. And now, the game gets really nice. Watch what white does. He forces the trades of all the minor pieces. And at first you think, hey, he's just going towards a draw. Black is just going to have one extra set of double pawns. How could this be enough for a win? But that's what's nice about chess. Watch. First of all, eliminating the bishop. That's easy. Pawn takes. Now notice the pawn on e5 is very vulnerable by the knight, albeit the knight is pinned to the queen by that bishop. So white put the question to the bishop. What are you going to do? Well, the bishop doesn't have that many choices. If he tries to stay on the diagonal and maintain the pin, we just kick it out. When the bishop retreats, the pawn is ours for the taking. The same thing is going to happen if the bishop retreats on the long diagonal. So having said A, he is forced to say B. And white takes back. Now we have a lot of pressure against this pawn, against this knight, excuse me. If you push the pawn to g5, in the game he just played queen d6, but if he pushes the pawn here, then the bishop is attacking this pawn. Let's say you defended it somehow, I don't know, maybe queen d6 or something. Now I can play my queen to f5, and white has an enormous advantage. Watch that queen, an untouchable queen. Now you probably have to play something very passive like this, and white has a huge advantage. For example, I don't know, maybe h4 looks like a really nice move to make here. Threatening to take the pawn. If you take, my rook comes to the game, and well, black looks really, really sad in this position. Notice that he cannot even easily castle, because remember that open file? My rook is going to gulp that pawn in 1 second. So we understand this part. So instead, after queen takes, he decided to play queen to d6, unpinning the knight. And white said, okay, I'm taking it. If you take with the pawn, you really have not much relief, because with queens on the board and such weak pawn structure, then my attacking chances increase. Again, I will just castle, and I don't think black is going to be so thrilled to castle here. And on the other hand, he can't easily castle here because, again, the pawn is going to be loose. So he played queen takes, trying to relieve some of the pressure. White took, and black took. So far, everybody's yawning, right? This was a most boring opening, and in speeding fashion, we have arrived at the ending. But if black thought that this is going to be a simple draw, even material, and no really open files or anything, then I can already reveal to you that this is near lost. Black is on the verge of a loss, and if you're puzzled why, then this is why we are here. We have gathered here to look at it. And now I'm going to hush up for just a tiny bit of time. Let's see if you can tell me what will be the first step in proving that this position is very bad for black. You have to try to form a plan. And maybe the first move you can see, but the question is, can you really see the whole plan? Very instructive way, because here you might play some, let's say, king e2 or castles, and maybe the game can end, maybe black can improve his position, maybe the game will end in a draw. It's not going to be too bad. So I'm going to leave you to think for a bit. Let me hear you think out loud, like what candidate moves are you looking at? Don't be shy, suggest ideas, even if they're not concrete or they don't work. Let's see together, what moves are you thinking about?
Castling and pawn f3.
Okay, so in other words, you want to improve, like straighten you.
File for the second file, yeah.
Or you want a castle.
Castle and push the pawn, to f4.
Very good. Okay, now we're talking something else. So you understand that the move f4 is a good break for white, and you are right. But watch how white does it. White is doing it in an improved version. He knows that I can play f4 right now, by the way, because I'm pretty certain that black is not going to take, right? After I castle, and I'm going to regain the pawn momentarily, and then I'm going to have a field day against your weak pawns right here, right? So I can play f4 at once. But before I go f4, I want to do more damage in the position. I have the ability, because when I go f4, and the black king is going to come and defend, maybe the black king is going to end up like on this square, then all you'll need is just one rook to defend the rest. The king is going to be a very active defender, agreed? Yeah. So how do I lure the king away? Watch what he did. He went rook a5. Beautiful. This is really clever chess, in my opinion. He's attacking the c-pawn. Well, I don't see many ways to defend it except the move that he played in the text, which was b6. Otherwise, any other move, I'm just going to say rook takes pawn, thank you very much, right? Easy. So he played the move b6, creating a weakness, and now rook a6. Making sure that this guy is not moving too far. And this is a target, you can already tell. What do I want to do now, if I'm white? Pile up again, yeah, I want a castle, and then bring my f rook to a1 and bye-bye pawn. Agreed? And there is no way to defend it. I'm castles and rook a1, and the pawn on a7 is gone. I'm up a pawn in the ending with all the fun in the world, right? What is black's only way to try to defend it? You gotta hold it somehow. What is the only piece that can support this on time? I agree. I agree. Well, your alternative is to try to play your rook to here and here. I don't think that this is a good long-term solution, right? Because you will not be able to make any moves. Both rooks will never move ever. I can always mark time with my rook to waste time if I need to. In the meantime, I'm going to play f4, bring my king into the game. Well, obviously, this is just losing in the long run. So black had to play king d7, white castles. Normally in positions like this in the endgame, the king is a very active piece and we play king e2 or king d2. We want to keep the king close to the center, but we already know why the idea is with castling. We want to be able to play f4 and the rook is already ready-made behind it for that kind of activity. My first threat, however, is rook f, a1, winning a pawn, winning the game. The black king must move itself further from the king side, and now white hits with the move f4. You understand what happened here? I was not winning the pawn on a7 or anything in this position, but I was luring the king away from defending the e pawns, the e and f pawns. The only way was to rush, and now that the king is away, now I'm playing the move f4. Okay, black tried to kick the rook away from this annoying square so he can also free his a rook, and white went all the way back. He has nothing else to look for on the file, no need to go elsewhere. And now you have to do something. Guess what? I'm threatening pawn takes, rook takes f7, extra pawn and a winning position. So he played rook h7. He needs to leave a rook on the h file because we know that even this guy is very vulnerable. If he would have played rook to f8, I would have taken, and rook h6, rook f6, and the pawn on h6 is already starting to suffer a lot. So white says, all right, I'm going to undouble your pawns because I want to open the file for my guys. So he took rook f6. One rook is already in the arena. The other one is about to follow. He played here. Okay, of course, that rook a f1 would have been okay. He decided to play this move first. He could have also done it immediately. That's not really a big deal. Only move to defend the pawn. The other rook is coming over to tickle f7. Black has another no-brainer. Now he repeated the position. He played here, simply intending to play f6. So he played back, and he played back, and now he played g4. He just repeated once for good measure. Now the pawn on g4 makes sure that the pawn on h5 has no grandeur ideas of advancing, God forbid. And watch how those two rooks are going to cause disaster. Those pawns are just so loose. The weaknesses are here, and here. And you cannot do anything on this side. Desperately, he's trying to bring the king back. Check. Here, what else? He has to be active because white is going to play the next maneuver anyways. What do you think? How do we pile up against the pawns? Look how passive the black rooks are. This rook is at full capacity, but we need to do something with this guy. So, use your imaginary hand, think that you have it. Where would you like to put it? Like if you can put it on any square on the board, where would you put it right now? What is the most promising square for the rook? Let's say here, I'll pick it up with my mouse. Where do I want it? I can have it anywhere. Where would I want it? Say again? A4. But then what? Let's say here, then what am I going to do? What is my follow-up? I want it where you can start picking up pawns. So where can I put it that's going to pick up pawns? What is my final destination? Say again? Again, c8, and what is my follow-up? Not easy to get to the pawn, it's protected. Well, I want it here, obviously. Right? If I get to h5, then how you defend all your pawns? So that's what he does. Rook to f5. Black is in real trouble here. In the game, he played a4, and that lost. It would have been interesting to play the move king b4, but look, watch how white is just calmly ignoring this. King f2, b5, that's the idea, to try to push the pawns, to create some weaknesses. Rook to c6, a beautiful little pawn that makes sure that black doesn't have any c4 ideas. a4, and now comes a beauty. White is not going to take the pawn on a4, because then if you take, and the pawn takes, then maybe a3, and the king will take, and then the king is going to penetrate and start tickling the chain from under. But white has a beautiful tactical defense. Watch it. King e3. What the heck is going on? Isn't black attacking the pawn on b3 twice and it's only defended once? And by doing so, he is going to permit the king to enter? No. There's a beautiful mate net. If you even dream about taking this pawn, which is a blunder, check. the king will run away to the a file. Here or a4 is even worse. And now white to move checkmate in 3 moves. That's right. Back home, threatening rook to a1 mate. I have only one move to avoid the mate immediately, and that is to create an escape square for my king. How does white take that away from him? c4. And next move is rook a1 checkmate. The king is just trapped in a mousetrap. There's a mate threat on a1. There's no way you can stop it. So even the activity with the pawn does not work for black. Nothing works. The weaknesses are just all over. Look at the clumsiness of the rooks on h7 and e7. So back we go to that position. And after rook f5, he played a4. So now white calmly took it, and the king took it, and rook h5. The pawns are starting to fall. c4. I don't know what else to suggest, because if you don't try to do something very aggressive, I'm going to take on h6, then I'm going to just go back and attack more pawns, and my h pawn is going to become monstrous. So he did this, takes, king here, took, rook here, again seeking activity, what else to do? And white says, okay, I'm on your pawn, king took, king f2, rook check, king e3. Of course, the h-pawn is very important. If you just bother to take this silly c-pawn, then I'm going to be able to guard both my pawns, win this pawn, and march them to queening. So, check, and takes, check, here, here. White is up a pawn, and he's just going to win material easily. Rook here, rook e7 attacking another pawn. What's the only way to defend? Of course, play f6. And now white plays a move that wins both pawns, g5. Beautiful. Removing the defender, he had to take, check, here. Now white is up 2 pawns, and of course the rest is very easy. Check, here, rook here, b3, rook here. You cannot defend the c-pawn, but okay, we'll take the other one. Rook here, here, and white went on to win. Of course, king and 2 pawns like that against with a rook, of course, it's a very, very simple win. So again, from the opening, what did we see? A boring opening. All the minor pieces and the queens were traded. There was one extra weakness for black on the king side. Both sides had double pawns on the other side, and that was already enough to create a winning advantage by opening lines to the rook, keeping the king busy on one hand, and then f4 with the penetration of our rooks. No defense. Okay. Now that we saw something technical, we're going to move to something a little more aggressive, I would say. Let's take a look at this. And this is a very interesting position, a middle game position. Let's take a look at that. We obviously see that white has a better position. That's no secret. He is castled, black is not. Both sides have 2 minor pieces developed and the queen developed. Of course, white has also a little more space, but the white bishop is attacked on g5. What are we going to do? We have to think to ourselves, what can be done in this position? If I'm just going to move a bishop away, especially let's say to h4 to try to maintain the pin, black is going to kick with g5, break the pin, and close any chances of white opening the file. The bishop will retreat, and black will just castle comfortably. The storm is over. If he manages to castle, that's going to be pretty good. When we look at this position, we also have to bring other consideration to the game. Black just wants to castle, either here or here. He's dying to escape. We need to think of what resources are we going to have in order to try to prevent that. So, also I want you to look at your pieces and think, which pieces do we like and which pieces do we not like? Well, pieces that we like has to be the queen, the bishop, and the rook on the f file. Those are pieces we really like. The pieces we don't like is the knight on d2 that is very clumsy right now, and the rook on a1 that hasn't moved. Black, on the other hand, is just in defensive mode. He has no pieces beyond the 3rd rank, and even this one is pinned. Of course, he's dying to just somehow castle and try to keep as many lines closed as possible. Material is dead even. What would you play here if you were white?
I mean, bishop takes knight on f6.
Bishop takes f6, again trying to trade, and of course I have to take back with the bishop. No way I can take with the queen. And then maybe you can take on g6, and the pawn will take back, and then you think to yourself, and now what? Right? Now what? Because again, black is just going to castle. So again, I don't want to make the moves because somehow the move always pops, and I hate that. But we can just use it without moving the pieces. Bishop takes, pawn takes, pawn takes. And again, we have reached some sort of a dead end. It's like we're just missing the extra firepower. If only we could activate our pieces further. But by then it's too late. So I want you to watch and see what white did. White just decided that he's going to do what we call in chess a clearance sacrifice. And he played e5. Brilliant. That's a very clever move. At first it looks like, what are you doing? He can take with the pawn. Of course, if he takes with the queen, rook e1, we all know it's going to be disaster. But he can just take with the pawn, and then it seems like the file is even closed, more closed than before. What is the big deal about it? Well, we know that after pawn takes bishop, pawn takes knight, followed by rook e1 check, that doesn't look happy, right? That just doesn't look good for black. There's not much to look at. But what happens if he just takes it? What did we achieve by sacrificing the pawn? Well, now we're taking the knight, and the bishop has to take back. We are taking the pawn to further open the file, and black has to take back. And now we bring our knight to e4. Now we understand the purpose of the clearance. That doofy knight that was doing nothing before is now the hero of the day. He comes straight to the center of the board, attacking the bishop. And now the rook on f1 is also attacking the bishop. Notice that that bishop all of a sudden becomes clumsy. If he even dare thinking of moving, he better, let's say bishop g7 is even worse, but let's try bishop g5. Okay? Then white has a fantastic move. Let's see if one of you can figure it out. Take a good look at the position.
d6 check.
I think that that's also good. Knight d6 check. If the queen takes, queen f7, right? And maybe rook to d1 after that, and maybe he'll have to play bishop d2. I'm positive that even this is good for white, but we can do it in reverse order. Rook f7. Smashing. Just a smashing move. If you even dream about taking, hello, knight d6 with a royal fork, winning immediately. If you don't take, well, where are you going to put your queen to prevent my queen from coming to e6 and my knight to d6? And, well, black can just go home, right? It's over. So that's out, but that bishop still needs to do something. We need to do something about it. It's under attack. The knight is attacking, the rook is attacking. What is the only move I have left? Yeah, it's a no-brainer. I have to go here. Now, again, before we even look for a move, we can just enjoy the position and see that for one pawn, for one little pawn, we have so much play here. Every one of our pieces is better. The queen is better than the queen. The minor is better than the bishop. The knight is better than the bishop. The rook on f1 is better than the rook on f8. And of course, the rooks on the a file kind of cancel each other out. Of course, the main thing is the king stuck in the center, while my king on g1 is just super safe. But I'll tell you what, fall asleep for one move, black is going to go left, castle. Life is going to be much harder. Again, if you wanted to play rook a to d1, who can fault you? Again, a decent move. But here, white played a very mature continuation because he realized that he's going to trade one advantage for another. And even though maybe it's going to physically be a little difficult to play the moves because you think, oh, do I really want to have to do that? But when you see what you're getting for it, it'll be hard to resist.
Rook takes the bishop on.
Say again?
The rook takes the bishop on f6.
Okay, so rook takes.
And you take it with the
Knight. Queen takes.
queen check on g8.
Queen f8.
And then you pick up the pawn down there. Another check.
Okay, I'm guaranteeing you that if I put the computer, he is going to love white in that position. But you know me. I'm a big believer in no overkill in chess. I demand the best. So this is sufficient. You could win with your continuation. It's very good, but I demand the best. But you'll be surprised that your first idea was right. Watch what we're doing. We are giving up that super knight and the great rook for that silly bishop and the other rook, but we are not doing it for no reason. This is not just a simple trade. This is, again, trading one big advantage for another. Watch what happens. He took, and the dormant rook goes straight into the game. And in this position, black has to resign because it's all over. You cannot stop all my threats. Of course, if the queen goes to e7, I'm going to go queen to g8 check, picking up the rook in the corner. If you try to go to g7 to stop those checks, my queen visits right here, and it's all done. Queen e7, queen g8 wins a rook, king d8. At a minimum, I have this, threatening mate, and the queen, winning the queen. Game over. So even though we really cherished and admire our knight and rook where they were, and that bishop is so useless and the rook is so passive, here we understand that by trading just the bishop for a knight, the second trade of rook for a rook is not this rook that we trade for the f8 rook, but the one in the corner. Why? Because after the takes, we have another one fresh coming in, and it's as if that rook here never left. White is winning immediately. Black resigned. Any questions? I think it's a pretty straightforward position. Okay, another position that I've brought for you is from this very exciting game between two legends of the past. The player with the white pieces is Viktor Korchnoi. Everybody must have heard of him, right? He was a vice champion for many, many years. And his opponent with the black pieces is Miguel Najdorf. Again, a very famous grandmaster of the past, of not so distant past even. And of course, everybody knows the Najdorf defense, right? The Najdorf Sicilian defense, sure. And in this position, Korchnoi played very enterprisingly. He reached this position. He sacrificed the piece for two very strong pawns on the 6th and the 7th. And at first glance, we look at the position and we are like, wait a minute. Black is attacking that pawn 3 times. White is defending it twice. Excuse me. And white cannot defend it a 3rd time. It looks like that with the fall of that pawn, the whole white army just falls apart. Even though it's white to move, it looks like what can he possibly do about it? But of course, Korchnoi calculated further, and he saw that he has a very, very good continuation in this position. Again, it's combined on tactical ideas, but also a beautiful positional concept that is also going to be shown. One idea is tactical, another idea is positional, a combination of the two. Try to think to yourself, if you were here as white, what are you going to do? You're about to lose the pawn on e6, the position collapses. Well, I'm going to show you because this is really, A, it's very difficult, and B, I want to show you more stuff. I don't want to waste time. Look what happened. Korchnoi played f4. Super. Just a supreme move. Now in the game, after some thinking, Najdorf played the move h6, and after f5, you can imagine that white just won prosaically, because now that wedge of pawns is just paralyzing everything. Okay, let's see, I have the rest of the game here, here, here. White just went all over. Okay, we can analyze this further, but here he resigned. There's a part of the game where both sides blunder. I don't want to go into this because it's not interesting. My point is to explain to you that this position, once I play f5, is just winning. This is a winning position. If you put it in the computer, even though materially is, well, just about even, a piece for 3 pawns, the computer says that white is up like a piece or a rook, some enormous amount, because it's completely paralyzing all the pieces. Everything is safe. So the big question was, wait a minute. Didn't you say that this was attacked 3 times? After f4, why didn't he just take that darn pawn? Well, we understand that in this position, you cannot play, for example, knight takes. The knight has to stay. If you want to take, you have to take with the rook. Of course, the queen is out because the rook is behind it. Of course, if knight takes, then it's very easy. The rook would have taken, and let's say the rook takes, the queen will sacrifice, because we're about to make a new queen right here. Black would have to block. We're going to just trade. Notice that white is up a pawn with the easiest of wins. A pawn upending is the easiest pawn up, easiest ending to win, because I'm just going to bring my king this way. I'm going to try to create a passer. Well, of course, this is just elementary. But so that's easy. But the question is, after f4, what happened if he goes rook takes a6? Why didn't he do that? Well, the answer lies in the following idea. Rook takes e6. Again, if you take with the knight, I will sack my queen for it, because I'm about to make a new one. So, of course, queen takes. Now, white, surprisingly, trade queens. At first, it looks suicidal. What is he doing? He is now down a piece for 2 pawns, and those 2 pawns are isolated and doubled. But watch the beauty of this position. f5. The knight must come back here. And now he plays h5. And there is no way to get the king out of the box. Just no way. If you're going to go g6, in the game, I think h6 was analyzed mostly, but if you go here, then I'm just going to play h6. Do as you please. You can move your knight, or let's say you take the pawn. I guess it's also logical. Now my king is going to go king up, 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 take this pawn. Then I'm going to go side, 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 take this pawn. And then I'm going to just march this pawn all the way. And notice that the poor king and knight are just as clumsy as they can be. So another alternative would have been to play h6. And again, many moves would win, but the beautiful line is g4, g6, the point. That's why h6 was played. So white cannot play h6 himself. But now watch what white can do. f6, pawn takes, and once again the king is in jail. No way you can get the king out of this bind. I have one task in my life, to go with the king all the way to here, take this pawn, march, 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 march. Just winning. Very aesthetic, right on the king side. Does the king look how the king and the knight are completely, he has as many moves as he wants. It's going to take me 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 moves to take the pawn. Then 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, you cannot stop it. Even if my king was somewhere in another room and had to make that maneuver, you still couldn't stop me. The king can just mark time like this. The knight cannot go away from f8 because I'm going to make a queen. Just helpless. Beautiful idea by Korchnoi. The beauty of chess, how it can be presented with very few pieces. Even in an endgame, this seems to be so tedious, or you have to calculate. But sometimes there's just such beauty in an ending like this. And then I'm going to show you, of course, what I call a dessert, like a position that's not super instructive, but kind of cute and very beautiful about the art of chess. But let's take a look at this position. At first, we see it and we think, how interesting can this be? Each side has a pawn on his 7th rank, and each side has the rook both attacking the opponent's pawn and defending his. The white king is on c8 blocking his pawn, and the black king seems to be free roaming on a6. However, in this position, white wins. And believe me, if you haven't seen it before, there is no way you're going to figure it out. It's just so tricky. It's really, this is called Lasker's maneuver. Emanuel Lasker had come up with this idea. Really very, very clever. So let's try to understand what happens. I can tell you one thing. If it's black to move, then he draws. Why? Because he can play king a7, for example. Put his king on a7. The white king can never show itself because I'll always check you. Even blocking is not a solution because I can just take and I have my own pawn to queen. It's not like that this is just a lone pawn versus nothing. But in this position, white wins thanks to a very, very elegant maneuver. And again, I'm hoping that you will enjoy. And again, the chances that you will have this ending is not very high. But the imagination, again. So, king b8. I have to move the pieces, sorry. King b8. I'm simply threatening to queen the pawn. What is black's only move to avoid this disaster? Rook check. Forced. Now, if the king goes back, then my king can go to a7, and I'm very happy. So, king a8. The king is hiding behind this king, using it for shelter. Now there are no more checks. What is my only move to stop the pawn from queening? Rook c2. Only move. Now I'm going to go check. Now, realize that if the king goes ever to the b file, then my king goes to b7 and you have no checks. I'm going to queen my pawn and win it. So you always have to play king to the a file. You can go king b6 or king b5 and I'm just winning. So king a5. Now white plays king b7. What's my idea? Queen. What is your only move? You must check me. You don't have any fancy ideas. And again, I'm behind the king. My idea is to queen. We already know that the only move to stop it is rook here. And once again, we check. We know that if the king even dreams about going to the b file, then white is going to play king b7, protected from checks and the pawn queens. So king a4. We already know what white wants to do. He brings the king here, wanting to queen. Black must check. King a6. Threatening to queen. So you go here. And now check. A pattern is emerging, right? That's already obvious. King a3. Very nice. Now it becomes a tiny bit harder. Now white plays the move king b6. King b7 is useless because after check, we can just repeat. King b6. What is my threat now? If you're white. What is white threatening? I'm not threatening to queen because my king is not supporting the queenie square. But my king is holding the pawn. Yeah? Say it?
Pawn f2.
Rook takes f2, distracting the rook. When the rook, the overloaded rook will take, then I make my queen, and I'm up a queen for a rook. So what does black have to do? He must check. And now king a5. Rook c2 is the only move, as we already well know. Now rook f3 check. The king has to go backwards. Doesn't matter anymore, b2 or a2. Now that the rook and the king are aligned together, rook takes f2, pinning the rook, giving you no time. If white would have done this before, then black would have just taken the pawn. But that was the idea of pushing the black king all the way to the 7th rank so that he is lined up with the rook to a skewer, and then we skewer, and after rook takes, we queen, and white is winning. The only way to win, but a pretty efficient one. Very, very nice. Any questions? You guys are looking a bit in shock. When I saw it first, I was also in shock. It's very, very, it's an amazing maneuver. Okay, guys. In closing, I'm going to show you one last position that was really, really one of the most beautiful compositions. I'm really, really infatuated with it, I have to say. And we have this position. Okay, obviously a composition, not from a real game. When you first look at the position, if you just saw it in a diagram or in a newspaper on adjacent board to your game, you think that white is just wasting his time. Black is about to make a new queen right here. The knight, even with a chopper, can't stop it, right? It's like, it looks over. So, bye-bye. Why is white playing on? But believe it or not, the requirement of this composition is white to move and draw. Looks impossible, but he can do it. Let's try to understand how and why. The first thing is to always think when there's a requirement to draw or win is how. How do we achieve it? How do we achieve a draw? What are the chances here that this is going to be like 50 move rule? Yeah, I don't think so. So you have to think maybe there's going to be an element of perpetual check or maybe stalemate. You have to think in those kind of directions. But when you look at the position, one thing must catch the eye, especially when you know that this is not an ordinary position. There's a requirement and something unique is going to happen, such as a draw in the seemingly lost position. You notice that the black king is stalemated, right? The black king is stuck behind his pawns and bishop, and those are not very mobile. The bishop can move, but not so easily. Lest we forget that our passed pawn here is held by the bishop. If the bishop gets some ideas, I might have my own queen too. So now we have to think to ourselves, how do we take advantage of it? All we have is a knight. So if I have a knight, where do I want my knight to be? I think so too. Right? The e6 square, hitting this, very logical. Okay, so we can try all kinds of things. For example, knight f6, e2, knight e4, e1. You can play knight c5 check. I will take it. You will make a queen, but I have an extra bishop. We both queen and I have an extra bishop, and white will just lose prosaically. So we have to try knight f8, and that's the solution. Knight f8. So e2, knight to e6, e1 equals queen. All right. Now, we already know that in this position, if we play knight c7, for example, and the bishop takes it, and the king takes it, then it's black to move with an extra queen, and he is easily going to check the king, stop the pawn from queening, probably pick up some pawns that even in the end he has to sack his queen, then it's going to be just another pawn that just runs away and makes a queen and win. Yep. So now we think to ourselves, wait a minute, I have an idea. If I queen my pawn, and if you dare take it, I'm going to play knight c5 check. King b6 is the only move. Knight d7 check. King a6 is the only move, and I've stolen a perpetual check. All right, then I'm in it. Queen. So now we think to ourselves, well, was it really that simple? No. Now it's black to move, and he says, well, I can't very well take the queen, and now the position is not very impressive for me. I even have to be careful, because if the white knight gets to give a check, the bishop will take it, my queen here might be checkmate. We really have to think about stuff like that. But he says, I have a whole queen up for the taking here. I can't do it right away because he's going to perpetual me, but I know that the queen is waiting for me to be captured. What can I do in the interim? What can I afford to do? You know, because if I go queen a5 check, then maybe knight c7 check. And you'd have to take, and the queen will take, not winning, not good. But if I know that I have a queen waiting for me to be taken, and I know that this knight is about to steal a perpetual for me, yes, I can afford to give up my queen for the knight. So again, the pendulum is turned. What is going on? Now is white losing? If he just takes this queen, bishop takes this queen, and of course an extra piece, and I'm going to take this pawn. Even if I have to sack my bishop, my pawn, black pawn here, is going to run and win. So what is going on? 1 second we think that black is just easily winning. Then we find a maneuver with the knight with all kinds of ideas. Then we queen our own queen, and then black sacrifices, so it looks like we're going to have to enter a piece down ending. So what are we going to do with white? Well, white has a monster move here. And again, the lesson here, since this position, obviously this kind of type of thing is very unlikely to happen in your games, but again, thinking out of the box, using your imagination and not deducting, not canceling the absurd ever. White played queen takes b6 check. A shocking move. Well, obviously if the king takes, I'm just going to take the queen, now white is winning. This is really ironic, right? That's impossible. If the pawn takes, and the white takes the queen, black is stalemated. The black king is stalemated. There's no moves. So you said, okay, this is all good and beautiful, but what if I just take with my queen, save my queen, and win your queen? Well, now white plays this little move, king to c8, and all of a sudden, the black queen has no moves. Despite being up a whole queen, black is not winning, because my only free move is here, and what does this do? Now the white king is stalemated. So, what are my options? If I go here, the pawn will take. If I go here, the pawn will take. If you go here, stalemate. You can try queen to c6 check, but the ending is going to be a draw. After pawn takes, you must take. King c7. Only move is to push the pawn, no other legal moves. I take it, and now it's a race. Push, 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 move the king, push, push, queen, queen check, and of course, black has no winning chances whatsoever in this position. His pawns are very loose, and white is checking him. He has to be careful not to start losing pawns and lose the game. So this is definitely not a winning try for black. So most likely he would have to concede in this position that he has no win, and he doesn't. And after this, here, king here, queen d6, and stalemate. Very nice composition, I think. No? I like it. Okay, guys, we are done for the day. Thank you very much for participating. And I won't see you next week, but maybe another time.